Hello, 24 frames per second. Do you need more or is that enough? The speed of 24 frames per second cannot be traced back to the birth of cinema. During the silent film period, anything between 14 and 26 frames randomly occurred because of the cameras and projectors operated by hand. When the film sound started to be available, it was necessary to change.
Dénes Mihály registered the projectophone patent in 1922, the storage of sound on film tape, the optical sound. This earned him recognition and his procedure became the basis of the sound film. In other words, the sound is stored on the same film material as the picture.
In order to store sound, some conditions must be met.
The speed of the film must always be constant, cannot fluctuate. The 16 to 18 frames per second to achieve the audio quality is not enough. It had to be raised and had to find a place for it.
As well as standardizing all parameters, so must work in the same way everywhere. This happened in 1929.
The image size was slightly compressed on the 35mm film, so the optical sound could be placed next to it. To reach a good enough audio quality for the reproduced sound, at least 24 frames per second must be needed, which has a dynamic range of roughly 40 decibels, from about 100 Hz to 12-14 kHz. And this is the data of the improved versions, not the original normal optical sound. 24 frames per second is a compromise. What is the solution that uses the least film material, which produces acceptable sound, while uses smallest space in the cheapest way? Don't forget that the film material is also expensive, it's heavy and takes up a lot of space, which makes its transport expensive and difficult. It is enough to project the 24 frames twice every second to minimize flickering. Another advantage of the 24 is that it can be easily divided, so it's completely divisible by 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 and 12, which makes cutting and counting frames easier.
So yes, the cinema effect, which is always so mystified, is nothing more just a compromise that achieves the audio quality that meets the requirements. The film and cinema technology remained with that in the next 100 years.
The reason many old silent films are sped up is because it was simply played with the later 24 frames per second, although they were recorded around 16.
Okay, now we clarified why 24 is the 24, let's go a little further. 24 frames per second has that certain cinematic effect that we know, the motion blur.
The movements are a bit washed out. There is no problem with that. This is mostly due not only to 24, but also its progressive nature. Fast movements moves between two recorded frames, which the technology could not track.
However, there is a problem with the juddery pannings. A lower frame rate results more chunky camera movements. Usually can be observed this in camera pannings.
TV technology used the called interlaced technology due to the bandwidth. They split the frames into two halves in the broadcast and forwards the even rows and then the odd rows, and the cathode ray tube of the TV draws it on the screen line by line. It happens so fast so our eyes and brain see it as a continuous thing. But since the TV sets have also developed, they are also capable for progressive scan, so displays the full frame at once. It reproduces the cinema blur movements, but unfortunately together with the juddery pannings. But higher number of frames creates more beautiful and sharper movements.
That is why the debate started between certain directors who wanted to take advantage of the higher number of frames and, for example, shot in 48 frames per second, such as James Cameron, Peter Jackson, or Ang Lee.
This gives smoother and more beautiful movements and more beautiful camera pans. The judder doesn't appear, but the motion blur effect is also lost. Okay, so then what is the good one? 24, 25, 30, 48, 50, 60? Well, whatever the maker wants. Basically, it doesn't matter which one. All of them can be displayed anywhere, all can be used, all have advantages and disadvantages, so decide what the creator wants and what they think is expedient. All today's displays, TVs, projectors, cinema projectors, they can display any in progressive mode. Therefore, the difference between the cinema and the TV productions are smaller. The interlaced technology is also in a verge of extinction precisely for this reason, and because the digital TV is no longer limited on the old PAL and NTSC standards, but there is a new standard, the DVB and ATSC.
There is only one frame rate which makes no sense today. This is the 23.976. This was necessary in the first place to be able to transmit 24 frames per second to the TV screen in NTSC countries. It has lost its meaning by now. So, which frame rate? Apart from 23.976, use that one you like, which you think to better serve the appropriate representation of the content. Thanks for watching. Please press like, subscribe. See you next time. Bye bye.